You are standing in a clearing at dusk. Someone from your tribe grabs your arm. Their eyes are wide. They point at the tree lean, then make a sharp grunting sound, then point again. You do not know if it means danger, or food, or come here. You will never know for certain. There are no words. There never will be. What if humans had never evolved language? Your species has walked this earth for roughly 300,000 years. For most of that time, the vocal and mental tools for full language were already assembling themselves in the background. Scientists have traced part of the story to a single gene called FOXP2, sometimes nicknamed the language gene, because damage to it in modern humans causes severe speech and grammar problems. Svana Pablo's team at the Max Planck Institute sequenced this gene in Neanderthal DNA and found the human version was already present in our archaic cousins. That means the biological hardware for language was old, very old. It did not have to turn on the way it did. There is more evidence buried in stone and bone. In 1989, researchers excavating Kebara Cave in Israel uncovered a Neanderthal hyoid bone, a small horseshoe-shaped bone in the throat that anchors the muscles used for speech. It was almost identical to a modern human hyoid. That single bone told scientists that other hominins may have had the physical equipment to speak, whether or not they use it the way we do. So the raw ingredient for language existed long before your ancestors became the only species left standing. What if that potential had simply gone unused? Think about how strange that is. Evolution rarely builds an expensive tool and then leaves it idle. A finely tuned throat, a brain wired for sequencing sounds into meaning, all of it costs energy to grow and maintain. And yet, the hardware seemed to have arrived before the software was fully switched on. Somewhere between having the parts and using them fully, a threshold was crossed. Cross it, and you get Kebara Cave, painted more than 30,000 years ago with animals so lifelike that modern artists still study the line work. A clear sign of symbolic thought passed down through instruction, through story, through language. Never cross it, and the parts simply sit there, capable but in use, like an instrument built but never played. To find the divergence point, you have to go smaller than a bone. You have to go into the brain itself, and into the size of your social world. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar studied primate groups and proposed that language evolved as a replacement for grooming. The hours apes spend picking through each other's fur build trust and alliances. As human groups grew larger than physical grooming could manage, Dunbar argued gossip and speech became a faster, more efficient way to bond dozens of people at once. Here's the fork in the road. If early human groups had stayed small, the size of a chimpanzee troop, the pressure that pushed grunts and gestures into full grammar may never have built up. No pressure, no push. No push, no language. Your ancestors could have stayed within Dunbar's smaller social ceiling forever, trading touch and gesture instead of words, and the wiring for syntax and abstract thought would have stayed dormant. So picture that world. Picture it as if it is the one you actually live in. Your tribe is small, maybe 30 people, because without language it is hard to coordinate trust beyond a group that size. You know every face, every smell, every posture. You communicate through a layered system of grunts, cries, gestures, and facial expressions, richer than any animal call, but nowhere near a true language. There is no grammar. There is no past tense. You cannot describe something that is not directly in front of you. You cannot say tomorrow we should move camp before the river floods, because there is no way to string cause and effect into a sentence. Instead, you point, you mimic, you drag someone by the wrist to show them rather than tell them. Planning becomes almost entirely physical. Hunting parties rely on hand signals refined over a lifetime together, the same signals your father used and his father before him. Tool-making spreads by watching and copying, not by explanation, so innovation crawls forward at a fraction of its real-world pace. Without shared abstract language, your tribe cannot easily pass down complex stories, warnings, or history beyond a generation or two. Knowledge that took centuries to build in the real timeline might vanish within a single lifetime here, because there is no way to encode it in words that outlive the person who knew it. Death would feel different too. In the world you actually live in, grief is spoken. It is eulogized, explained, wrapped in ritual language that gives shape to loss. Here, without words, grief would stay raw and physical, a wail, a held silence, a hand pressed against the ground where someone used to sit. You would feel it just as deeply. You simply would have no way to turn it into a story that comforts the people around you. And without stories, there is no mythology, no explanation for the sun or the stars or where your people came from. The world would simply be the world, unexplained, experienced rather than narrated. Your body would look different too, without the constant demand for controlled breath and fine motor control in the throat. The descended larynx that helps modern humans form vowel sounds may never have been favored by evolution. Your neck and jaw might sit differently. Even your brain would be shaped by disuse. The regions in real human brains dedicated to grammar and word retrieval, areas like Broca's and Wernicke's regions named after the 19th century scientists who first linked brain damage to speech loss, might stay smaller, redirected toward memory for faces, spatial navigation, or emotional reading, since your survival now depends on those instead. Here is a twist, the part that should surprise you. This wordless world would not be simple. It might, in some ways, be sharper. Studies of nonverbal communication in modern humans suggest we already read up to 2/3 of meaning in a conversation through tone, posture, and expression rather than the words themselves. In a world without language, that channel would not be a backup system. It would be the entire system, refined over hundreds of thousands of years into something modern humans can barely imagine. You would read a flicker of someone's eyebrow the way you now read a full sentence. Lie would become almost impossible because there would be no words to hide behind, only a body that cannot fully control what it reveals. In some ways, this silent world might be more honest than the one you actually live in, but it would also be smaller. Without language, there is no way to build a kind of large-scale cooperation that let real human groups form cities, laws, or written history. Trade between strangers, the backbone of complex civilization, depends on the ability to make promises across time, and promises are made of words. Religion, mathematics, philosophy, science, all of it depends on abstract symbols passed from mind to mind. Without language, your species might still be living in small, scattered bands today, technologically closer to your ancestors 200,000 years ago than to the world you actually inhabit. The very same trait that lets you understand this sentence right now is the trait that built everything else around you. And this is where the alternate timeline folds back onto your real one. You already carry the ghost of this wordless world inside you every single day. When you meet someone new, you form a snap judgment in a fraction of a second, before either of you says a word, built entirely on old, nonverbal circuitry that predates language itself. When you comfort a crying child, you do not reach for vocabulary first. You reach for tone, touch, and expression, the same channels your ancestors used before they had any other option. Every time you catch a lie not from someone's words, but from something in their eyes, you are using the operating system that ran your species for hundreds of thousands of years before language layered on top of it. Language did not replace that older system. It was built on top of it, borrowed its architecture, and still leans on it more than you realize. The wordless world was never fully left behind. It is still running underneath every conversation you have. You are standing in a clearing at dusk. Someone grabs your arm. Their eyes are wide. This time, they do not need to point. They say 4 words, and in an instant you know exactly what they mean, what to fear, and what to do next. It took your species 300,000 years to earn that sentence. You have carried it, without noticing, every day since.